Why do some of the smartest, most capable women still feel lost when it comes to their finances? Today on Brand for Good, I'm talking with Ed Vargo and Melana Carbary, the powerhouse duo behind Burning River Advisory Group and their groundbreaking second business, enlightenHer. Learn about their mission to demystify financial decision making for women and their first of its kind program, Divorce Navigator. If you've ever wondered how financial education can change lives, or if you need a little empowerment yourself, join us for this powerful conversation. Welcome to Brand for Good, the show for purpose driven leaders who want to build timeless brands and create sustainable impact. I'm Lorraine Sugart, former PR and marketing executive turned founder of the disruptive agency Prosper for Purpose. I've worked with some of the world's most beloved brands, and I'm here to help you elevate your brand identity, visibility, influence, and impact. Are you ready to brand for good? Let's go. Hey, and welcome back to Brand for Good, where today my guests are Ed Vargo and Melana Carbary. They are co-founders of both the Burning River Advisory Group and enlightenHer, which is an educational business that they started more recently. So welcome to the podcast, Ed and Melana. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm good.
Good. Well, just want to start with a question to both of you about why, after years running a successful financial advisory business, did you feel inspired to create enlightenHer? So, Melana, you want to take the first question? I know with two people, sometimes it's like, okay, who's going to jump in? So we'll start with Melana.
Yeah, I'll share my piece. And then I think the really original owner of the idea is Ed, but I certainly felt strongly when he brought the idea to me for doing something. And the reason was because at the time my mom was battling cancer, and I think she maybe had just passed when Ed came to me with the idea of enlightenHer. And during her cancer battle, wasn't able to work. And so she filled some of the free time by volunteering at a local food bank. And she would just see women coming in who were in really unfortunate situations. And she knew that Ed and I had so much knowledge. And she said, Melana, you've got to find a way to get this information out to these women, when maybe otherwise can't afford your services or just don't have access. You have to find a way. And so when Ed brought this idea to me, I immediately went back to her words and was like, yes. I don't always say yes to every one of his ideas. He has a lot of them. This one definitely hit me on a different level, that connection with my mom. So
Yeah. So it was personal. Ed, where did this idea for enlightenHer come from?
Yeah, the genesis of the idea was really founded in my girls. I have five, young daughters, and they're not as young as they were when this idea first started percolating. But, I started to look at them and how they were engaging with money. And in comparison to how they were engaging with money and how their contemporaries, their peer group, were engaging with money. And they weren't engaging it with money in a sophisticated way. I'm not talking like investments and rates of return and those types of things. I'm just talking about how they generally talked about money, thought about money, and then utilized it. And then looked at them, again, how they looked at money. And I looked at their peer group, and they just had a very different way of looking at money. And I took notice of that. And I thought they were thinking about money in a much healthier way than their peer group.
Okay.
And, you look at that and you can see this dichotomy in front of you. And I was just like, the only significant difference between the two is that my girls had the benefit of growing up with a father who's a financial advisor. And so we talked about money, and I started digging deeper into this concept of money and its impact on young people. And that's where the idea first started. It's like, wow, if my girls are going to be in such a better place financially, not because they made way more money, they were poor as anybody else, right? There's poor teenagers and college kids, but they thought about money fundamentally differently than their peer group. And I was like, well, it's good for my girls, but it's bad for all those who don't have, say, a financial advisor as their parent.
Right.
And so then I was just like, wow, what if we could get in front of these young women early in the process, like right either in high school or right in college, and get them the knowledge they need, build the foundation in an early stage of their life so they can carry that forward for the rest of their life. And that was really the genesis behind the idea of taking what we know, and to Melana's point, sharing it with a much larger, broader audience. And so from a practical level, so I have that sort of the motivation behind it, but also from a practical standpoint, like in a wealth management business, which is what our Burning River Advisory Group business is, it's traditional wealth management. You need to have a certain amount of money for it to make sense to work with us. And what that really meant was from a practical standpoint, we might be able to work with a couple hundred households. That's it. So here we are. Melana and I have a lot of experience, a lot of credentials, a lot of years in the trenches working primarily with women to help them make better decisions with their money. And yet our reach was only a couple hundred households wide,
Right.
which seemed like a bit of, I didn't feel great about that. I was like, wow, we have all this knowledge and yet we're only sharing it with a small group. And so you take those two ideas together, this opportunity to really help women in a very different way, get on the forefront of it, and then take our knowledge, all these years of experience, and be able to apply it on a much broader scale. And that's ultimately what led to enlightenHer. It's where we are today.
That's great. And so tell us a little bit about what Enlighten Her focuses on right now. So there's lots of free information on the site, which really could benefit young women in high school and college, but also women of any age that need to take another look and say, there's some myths that I have to overcome. I have my own ideas. And so tell our listeners a little bit about how what you share has evolved on that site.
Yeah. So to your point, there is a really great piece on money myths. So there's so much free stuff. The money myths piece is free. And then there's some blogs and information on there. We're going to be hopefully trying to continue to build that out and just offer really good content that is coming from two financial advisors, not being written by, a journalist who's writing on finance. So, really coming from the source where we're really trying to provide quality information. I was pulling from all the years of us being in the trenches with clients, seeing so many different situations and living our own lives as well. The biggest piece on there right now focuses around women navigating divorce. And so we have our Divorce Navigator program, and that is a webinar that we have created that has myself, Ed, it has two mental health therapists on there, actually a coach and a therapist, and then two family law attorneys as well. So just really trying to provide a comprehensive starting point for women who are thinking about going through divorce or perhaps will find themselves already in it.
That's really powerful. And the Divorce Navigator program addresses a highly emotional and complex issue. And so, what gaps, maybe Ed, you can take this so you guys can volley back and forth, did you see in the traditional financial or emotional support systems currently out there that you felt compelled to fill?
Yeah, I think there's a practical reality is that the world of finance, traditional world of personal finance was not built with women in mind. And I don't say that in any sort of way, right? I don't say that in a negative way, like, oh, big bad Wall Street is coming, doesn't want to take care of
Right.
women. It just didn't grow up working with women. So it's an industry that was founded, 100 years ago plus. And so the economic environment at that time was very different. So what you had is an industry that grew up very male dominated and was built to cater to other men because that's who had the money. So very naturally, what had sprung from that, and this isn't so obvious, and this is one of the barriers that women have when it comes to engaging with money, is that the language of money and the lens at which the world of money was created through a male lens. And
Right.
so there's a reason why, if you're a woman out there, you've ever wondered, like, why does my husband or my partner, boyfriend get this financial stuff much easier, quicker than I do? Why is there such a gap there? You're not crazy. It's not you. It's just really how the industry grew up. And so the language and the way everything was built for the male point of view. And there's no changing that quickly and easily. There's no way to change that because what's built, it's the system, right? It's kind of built that
Right.
way. And so you can't just
Right.
change language and terminology. So either women are going to have to completely shift how they think about money and start to think differently, which is not really going to be the case on a wholesale level, or the industry's got to start to come their way and modify things. And I think that's what enlightenHer is about. It's about recognizing, okay, there are some barriers that women have with engaging with money. They're going to, just by circumstance, hold them back from being able to engage as readily as their male counterparts. I want to make sure that I don't come across like that's such a big barrier that women can't overcome it. That's not
Sure.
true. I mean, it is a barrier and it's one that you can readily overcome, but it does exist. So there's no fatalistic notion around it. But the point is that we've built enlightenHer to kind of meet women where they are. The language is different. The language is built for how women think about money, how women engage with money. And so it's much easier to engage with them. So as an example, when men think about money, they think about it in a very concrete way. And I'm going to broad generalizations here, but there's a bunch of studies to back all of this. What I'm about to say, back it up, is that men tend to engage with things more readily, and money is a thing. And so when they engage with money, it's about rate of return and what am I earning against the benchmark? And it's very tangible, sort of money focus on the money itself. Women, on the other hand, they're not concerned as much about rate of return and amassing the most money. What they tend to focus on is, what is this money going to do for me? How is it going to support me in my life? Am I going to be able to take care of my kids? Am I going to be able to retire in time, not work, die at my desk, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And so if we recognize that, then we can start to craft different ways of talking about money. And so enlightenHer, quite frankly, and Burning River as well, have been built from the ground up to support women and to think like women and come from that female perspective, versus just taking, like these male colored glasses and trying to modify them slightly to fit women. It's just a complete from the ground up rebuild. And I think that's what makes our businesses so different, and why we engage with women so much more readily than our peer group, is because we've completely started from scratch. We didn't start with this male-centric point of view. We started with a female-centric point of view and built that from the ground up. And so it started with Burning River, and now we're taking that same concept and trying to bring it to the masses through enlightenHer.
I was going to jump in and just kind of tie that into Divorce Navigator as well.
Yeah.
What we're seeing there. And it kind of ties into what Ed is saying about some of these trends with women that we were noticing and that we were seeing. And so, again, because our practice was working largely with women, we were having women come to us under the Burning River umbrella and with a settlement, with it kind of the deal.
Yeah.
And we decided that we didn't like being on that end of things. We wanted to try and get ahead of it. And so some of the common pitfalls that we were seeing with women coming to us was that, they would prefer to keep the house. They didn't understand that they were giving up the 401k in order to keep the house, how that was impacting them long term. So being financial planners, we have that long-term perspective always in mind. And so, that was the house versus a 401k is like a very common one that, we would see with women. And it's one we continue to kind of overcome with women and try and help educate them about that decision and that choice and the potential long-term implications of it. But we were definitely having women coming to us after their divorce. And we decided, no, we got to start getting ahead of this. We got to find a way to bring education to women prior to their divorce so that they're equipped with good financial information, good legal information, and mental health information so that they can process through this as favorably as possible and hopefully have better outcomes on the other end. That's the goal, is to help women get better outcomes through divorce, to avoid some of the common pitfalls that as women, we tend to fall into. We tend not fall victim or fall prey to, but that we just tend to, because of our biases, find ourselves in.
And I like that Divorce Navigator is a holistic approach, right? And so you're blending financial advice with emotional support and educational support, some legal guidance in that way. But we want to be clear that taking this course, which is very affordable, really equips you with the tools and the right questions. It's not intended to replace your financial advisor or your therapist or your legal counsel, but to really guide you before and during your work with them so that you make sure that you're asking the right questions and that you're getting the support you need, correct?
That's actually really true. I'm glad you said that because I hadn't actually thought of it in that exact way, but it's a comprehensive base of information. And so oftentimes not knowing what questions to ask can be harmful to the outcome, right? If we're seeking good outcomes,
Right.
knowing what questions to ask along the way can really help you. And if you just don't know, then you're not going to ask those questions. And so to your point, we're not giving specific advice. There's a lot of guidance in there, but really trying to create a broad scope of information and knowledge so that women can go into situations throughout their divorce and know what questions to ask, at least have some things on their radar that they might not have had on their radar otherwise.
Absolutely. Like short term getting the house versus long term with the 401k. Ed, what do you think makes the Divorce Navigator program unique? And how does it empower women to take control of their financial futures during a time when that's probably not what they're most focused on?
Well, the idea behind Divorce Navigator is to give women a well rounded view of what divorce really is, the whole process of divorce. There's no question in my mind that most people, men and women alike, coming into divorce, quite frankly, don't understand and appreciate the magnitude of what they're about to step into. And I'm not talking about the emotional magnitude or the impact in their life of ending their marriage. I'm talking about the process of divorce. And so before you even decide to get divorced, you should know, what does that legal process look like, right? Specifically, how does it flow? And I don't think most people have any idea or any real idea what that looks like. They get snippets of information. And so the problem is, you need to solve this complex problem, which brings together three major elements: finance, legal, and the emotional side. And of course, your emotional state can color everything coming thereafter. So you're bringing these three pieces together. And before you start to engage with it, you need to have some idea of what you're getting into. And this is fundamentally, and to Melena's point, we're trying to get out in front of all of that and educate people before they step into this and they start making decisions. So, as an example, one of the most important decisions that you'll make is whether to hire an attorney and which attorney to hire. I think in most cases, people should hire a divorce attorney, even if it's a simple case. That's an opinion, but it's backed by a lot of science and experience. But how do you know which attorney to hire? Well, before you do that, you need to know which process of divorce you think you might walk down. And if you don't know what that is, you shouldn't even be considering what attorney to hire. And so what I find again is that there's a lot of lack of understanding, a lack of education about the whole process. And so the Divorce Navigator program is designed to give you a baseline level. So when you start down this path, you know which path to walk down. Because the problem with that is, it's not like you can unwind a bad decision cheaply.
Right.
So I'll give you a very simple example. If you hire the wrong attorney, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars minimum to start over, right? So you go to an attorney, you pay a retainer, it's going to be thousands of dollars for a retainer. You work with that attorney, and by the time you realize that's the wrong attorney, you're thousands of dollars of fees into the process. So now you're $3,000 of fees into the process, and you're like, oh man, this attorney is not the right fit. He or she's not advocating for me the way I need to be advocated for, etc. And
Yeah.
so you'd have to basically say, I'm going to stop right there. That's dollars spent, water under the bridge.
Mhm.
And you've got to find another attorney and start all over again and pay thousands of dollars to cover the same ground. And that happens time and time again in the divorce process. The divorce attorney, hiring the wrong attorney, is just one obvious example of that. So we're trying to get out in front of that, give women enough context to go out and make these decisions, to take the step down the right path versus making a bunch of mistakes along the way, which are costly financially, emotionally, and in terms of time spent.
Yeah, that's really, really important. And going back and looking at where this came from, what has the reaction of your clients been to learning that you started this additional business for education?
It's been really positive, and we've actually had a lot of clients who have said, "How can we help? How can we, we want to be a part of this, or how do we help, spread the word?" So many of our clients, of course, are women, and I think one of the things that studies have shown women are really good at is connecting. We've had a lot of just really interesting input from our Burning River Advisory Group clients on suggestions for how to get the word out there, on connecting, a lot of enthusiasm around it, which has been really great. We've also had a few of the husbands just say, "Hey, we get it. Like, we're glad you're helping people, but like, we don't want our wives taking this course."
That's interesting. This is a podcast that's focused on branding. Certainly, we bring other aspects into it. But just by what you said, that really shows that through BRAG, the Burning River Advisory Group, you've really built a brand of trust. People have confidence in you, they believe in you, they want to help you succeed. Would you say it's through the service that you've given? Do you think that there's other aspects to how you work with your clients?
I am pretty certain that it's a financial planning process that we adhere to. So it does set us apart. There are other advisors out there who do comprehensive financial planning and who do it in a similar way as us, but it really is a relationship oriented process. It's a data gathering, it includes data gathering. It really includes getting to know the client. Trying to understand some of their pitfalls, how they got to where they are without judgment, but just understanding how did you get here, good or bad, and then how
Right.
do we help you plan for the future you want to have going forward. So it's a lot of in-depth conversations and data gathering upfront, but that continues. It's an ongoing process. So you really do get to know we get to know our clients, and I think our clients get to know us through that process because we do spend time together and it's involved, and it definitely sets us apart. I cannot tell you how many people I talk to on the phone, I know Ed's met with, who are referred to us or who find us and who said, this is exactly what I was looking for, and we were not able to find it because just not a lot of advisors are working in this capacity. And then I like to think too that, just our personalities and who we are, we're not sitting behind big mahogany desks. We're not wearing full suits every day. If you see us in a full suit, I don't even own one, so whatever, you'll never see me. If you see Ed in a full suit, I mean, there's something going on. It's just who we are. We try to bring through our personality with our clients. We try not to make it some formal atmosphere. Again, maybe I never thought of it this way, but maybe that's kind of going into that environment that was built more for men. And we're kind of anti that, right? We definitely are
Right.
for women. And I don't know if women prefer to have a mahogany desk and an advisor in a suit or not, but we're certainly not that. And I think it makes it more approachable.
And I think that goes back to what you said about, or Ed said, meeting people where they are and doing that in a way that you're not across this, 3 foot deep desk and approaching them with this power and authority that can be really intimidating to people that are coming to see someone for help, especially in this industry. And so I have to think that being approachable and caring about the whole person has gone a long way in you building the brand, not only for Bragg, but with enlightenHer.
And just to kind of add into that, I think it is our high touch process on the bride side where we really do invest time into those clients and those relationships. It's part of how Ed and I are capped. As a two advisor team, we're so capped at how many people we'll be able to work with. And
Right.
back to the creation of enlightenHer, and as a way to try and get the knowledge that we have out to the masses, because even though there's two of us and we have some support in the office, because of how we engage, we're only going to be able to help a certain number of families.
Absolutely. So, kind of talking about meeting people where they are, Ed, you have your own personal story of why you decided that you wanted to help women. Would you share a little bit of that?
Sure. I think it's kind of like that tale of two cities. It was the best of times and it was the worst of times. And so I think about like where it started, which was with my mother. So that was the worst of times. What happened was my mom and my father divorced when I was pretty young. I was probably 9-ish years old. Don't
Hmm.
know exactly off the top of my head. And what happened, the short story was, unfortunately, my mother had to ultimately give up custody of her 4 children because she couldn't provide for them. Now, a little backstory is my mom was an immigrant from South Korea. My parents met when my father was stationed in South Korea during Vietnam. They got married overseas. A bit of a sweetheart story, right? They met, fell in love. My older brother was born in Korea. And then he had 3 other children back here in the United States, but the relationship didn't last. And there was a lot of cultural barriers and just logistical barriers that my mother faced. She didn't read, didn't write the language, never drove. So going out and finding a job that could provide for 4 children really wasn't feasible. And she
Right.
didn't understand this concept of child support or alimony, and divorce was still a bit taboo back then. So she was up against a lot. Long story short, she felt that she wasn't going to be able to provide for us children and therefore gave up custody. And my father had custody of us 4 kids. And so it took me a long time to really realize, because as a child, you think about your own self in that, right?
Right.
Yeah, you're looking at it from your own lens, as a young boy. I mean, I didn't know how to think about that. And I wasn't thinking about it in the right way. And then years later, probably, getting out of college, I started to put myself in her shoes and really realize that that's a mother who gave up custody of her 4 children, right? Imagine that, having to do that and what impact that would have on your life. And that was kind of thrust upon her. She really did not know any better. If she knew better, if she knew what I know now, it would have been a completely different scenario. Her decision making, her whole life would have been different. And she would have had a different type of relationship and engagement with her children and us to her if that was the case. And so that was the worst of times. And so I kind of approach it from like, I never want another woman to have to go through that if I can prevent it. And we can do our small part to help prevent that. So that's one side of it. The other side are my five daughters, and so I think of them as the best of times. Can I
Yeah.
help create an environment for them to flourish? Can they go out into the world and be strong, formidable women, independent? And I think a big part of that is being financially independent. It's hard for me to think that someone's truly empowered if they don't have their own financial stability, because
Mhm.
money can be wielded like a weapon and held to hold you back. And so I really feel very strongly that in my professional life that, it's part of our mandate, so to speak, our mission to help women to understand money so they can be strong, formidable, and go out into the world and do things on their own. But at the very least, not let money hold them back. And so that's how we engage with women. We look at money as a tool. It's a very powerful tool that we have to harness and utilize as best we possibly can to accomplish the things that we want to accomplish in our life. Whether it's in conjunction with our spouse or partner, or if it's on our own, it still is incumbent upon us to use it as well as we possibly can and help enhance our lives in the process.
That's really inspiring. And it's really interesting how the two companies are taking different approaches to the same issues. You're educating through both processes, but one is geared towards people who are coming to you as clients, while the other is much more, has the potential for much broader impact. And I like how Melena referenced that you can only work with so many clients one on one, but you have all this knowledge. And so Enlighten Her is a way to share that. So, Melena, where did the name Enlighten Her come from?
Ed did more work on the name than I did. And I know he has a funny story. I think sometimes when you hear it, you just know it. I kind of grew up with that philosophy from my mom. Like, you know it when you see it.
Yeah, I can step in. What happened with
You
the
sound
enlightenment?
hesitant.
Yeah, no, not at all. In fact, if
Okay.
I could visually show you, it would have more impact, but I'll try and walk you through the story. And there is a funny element to it. So I'm brainstorming over this name of this new thing that we're going to go out and potentially do. And so I would go to a coffee shop with my girls. I would like do work and they would come and study. And so it was kind of way we would hang out together. We did this all the time. And so one day I was in a Panera Bread, right? Grabbing coffee, working on this name for hours. I'm just going through all different types of names. And
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sitting across from my second oldest daughter, Mia. And Mia's a bit of a spitfire. And so I'm going through all these names and I keep asking her. She's like, yes, no, I don't know, that kind of thing. And so I finally come up with the name Enlighten Her. And I write it out on a piece of paper for her. And Enlighten Her spelled with the small E at the start and a capital H, right? So Enlighten is in small caps and then H, capital H, her. So I write this down and I turn it to Mia. I said, hey, what do you think about this one? And I felt good about this one. She's like, Enlighten Her. Not bad. I like it. But I like this one better. And she grabs the pen and paper from me. And so I can't see it. She writes down on the piece of paper. And what she writes and turns it around to me, she's like, what do you think of this? And it says, destroy him with a small D and a capital H. Oh my gosh, it still cracks me up every time I hear it. Literally, like in an instant, she was like, I got one better for you. And it said destroy him on it.
Oh,
And so,
gosh.
Which
yeah.
is
And
not what we're out to do. We're pro women. We're not
I was going to say,
anti
yeah,
men.
we're not anti men. You have a co founder as a man. We're just here
right,
to help women. Yeah. She sounds
exactly.
feisty. I've not met Mia. Yeah, she sounds
Oh,
feisty.
yeah, she's a spitfire, that's for sure. But that's the story behind it. And then Enlighten Her was the name that stuck. It made sense. And
Yeah.
it kind of touches on this. The idea behind it is empowerment, right? It's being able to,
Mhm.
so like Burning River is a little different, or maybe a lot different in the sense that we're like a do for you model. And you come to us, basically, we're going to do as much as we possibly can for you. And we're going to do the research, we're going to implement, we're going to execute, we're going to take the ball and run with it. We're basically your guy on the inside, so to speak, guy or gal on the inside who can look at the entire world of finance. That's our mandate, and try to come to you with solutions and ideas and be proactive in the process. Needless to say, to do that in that way, it takes a lot of time, a lot of expertise, because it's not just on investments, it's around, estate planning and taxes and all kinds of other stuff, right? So it's the full gamut of the financial world. That is Burning River. Enlighten Her, on the other hand, is about more about education and empowerment. It's the do for yourself models. So maybe DIY, right?
Right.
And kind of do it yourself. It's more like a coaching model. So we can coach you up, we can give you information, we can direct you so you're not spinning your wheels trying to figure out where to go. Now, I can't do all the research for you. We
Right.
can't, dig into it like we would on the Burning River side, but we can point you in the right direction. We can analyze and help give you the tools so you can go out and do for yourself. So it's a very different way of engaging, but still much better than going on Google and typing in financial planning for women and getting a
Yes.
million hits and trying to figure out, what do I do?
Exactly.
And yeah,
Exactly. And what kind of expertise does the person have? And, are they someone that just did it for themselves? Yeah, I think that's really true. Vetting experts, I think a lack of consumer awareness and education has been part of, not certainly the whole thing, of the lack of consumer trust in business. And so, being able to do your homework and know what you're looking for and find reputable resources is really important. So, I have a question. Either one of you can take this, but what challenges did you face and how did you navigate those challenges to be able to build a second business while you were running your first?
well, I'd say we're still facing those challenges now, right? We're getting this kick-started and off the ground. I think we're coming at it from a place of strength in the sense that, to your point, what you just said, we're classically trained in the world of finance. We're not a TikToker who is good at like being on camera and telling a small story but it's kind of surface level. We have
Right,
credibility behind us and all of those things. However, the hard part is getting our message seen in a sea of all these other entities out there, and everybody lumps us together as if we're the same thing.
right.
And it's hard, yeah, it's hard to differentiate yourself from one to the next. So it's actually a little bit easier on the Burning River side to do that because we're going, sort of narrow and deep. And so when we start having conversations about prospective clients in that regard, it conjures up a certain type of person. So you have a narrow focus. You can target your focus to this small group. It's like fishing in a very small pond,
Yes,
right? So you can really more readily, getting fish in a barrel kind of thing. Whereas on the second business, we're running into the challenges of, how do we differentiate ourselves? How do we take our strengths and credentials, knowledge, understanding? And if we get a client, if we get somebody's ear, we know that they're probably going to work with us.
what would your hopes and dreams for Enlighten Her be? How do you envision the impact growing over the next 5 to 10 years? And I guess I ask that in not in terms of expansion, but what other things you might make available to people.
We've talked about potentially making a course for women, like starting out, starting over. So a new college grad, or maybe a woman who did go through divorce, who had never handled the money before, and now for the first time, she's in charge of that money. So something along those lines we would love to have available. So, it would be sort of in addition to the Divorce Navigator course that we have now. But, something is focused for women who are new to money, are new to finance. So again, another like foundational type program. I would love to see that happen.
Yeah,
These programs take time, back to your previous question.
right.
It's the challenges. We're running a full-time busy practice. And so finding time to create these programs and get them out to the world has some challenges. But I look at it, and one of the areas for the starting over idea is that we have had clients who've said, "Hey, can you help our daughter? She just graduated college." Now, keep in mind, we probably helped them plan for
Yeah,
paying for her college.
right.
So it's meaningful as well to be able to have something to offer to, continue to support our clients, but in slightly different ways. So that's one thing that's on my radar. I'm not sure how soon, but it's on the radar for me. Ed probably has a lot more ideas.
Well, I have plenty of ideas, that's for sure, but that's the one that stands out. That was the starting point for me.
Right.
That was sort of the genesis of the idea was, can we help young women? The very first point was, can we help young women learn about money at the earliest stages? In fact, if I go further to that, my initial thought, and if you're talking about building a business, my target market wasn't really the end user. It wasn't the child. It was the mother of the child, right? So think about this. If you're a mom, what if somebody came up to you when you were 21 years old and tapped you on the shoulder and could convince you to learn about money earlier, to put you in a position to avoid all the money mistakes you've made up to this point, or most of those mistakes. If you could go back to your 20-year-old self, what would you tell that young woman about money and how to engage with money? That's the lens that I started with, because I think that in this world of sameness, money is an emotional topic. It's a scary topic in a lot of ways. It's intimidating. And if you get it wrong, you can lose a bunch of money, right? So it's not something that people come at with high trust. And I think if you really want to move the dial in any business, right, if you can invoke some emotion into it, then that's going to help. And I thought that that's the one area where we might be able to invoke some emotion, is a mother thinking about the welfare of her child. And that be moms, aunts, grandparents, grandmothers.
Right.
I've seen this in countless cases where they will do for others, for the other women in their life, that they wouldn't do for themselves, even though they know they should. Think about how many sacrifices that a mom would make of her own for the betterment of her children. And that's kind of the idea, right? So if a woman, let's say you're a mom and you're not going to do the financial planning work for yourself. Let's just say you can't get past it. You're not going to hire a financial advisor or engage with a coach or a course. But if you were going to go to your daughter, you'd probably give her the advice, you should probably do this. And that was kind of the idea. Can we get moms engaged enough who have emotion around this subject to help their daughters take that step, a step that maybe they couldn't take for themselves? And so the starting out portion of the starting out, starting over course has always had a special place for me. I also think it's where you can have the most long-term impact. So imagine if this generation of 20 somethings can get really trained up on money, the women get really trained up on money. And then, of course, they're going to have families of their own. If they're good with money, they're probably going to pass on some of that to their children, to their nieces, even their nephews, right? We don't want to
Right.
ignore the
Right.
boys, right? And then if you are comfortable enough, right, to move outside of your own backyard, have this whole take care of your own backyard philosophy. But if you can take care of your backyard, your core group, but some people can expand beyond that and they're talking to their peer group. So Melana does a great job of this. Obviously, she's in finance. She understands finance very well, but
Just have to interject to kind of epitomize the story that you're saying, because I started in the financial services industry at 23 years old. And it was my first job out of college. And my mom told me when I was thinking about taking a job, she's like, well, if you take this job, you're going to learn things about money that you're going to be able to use the rest of your life, even if you don't stay in this career.
Wow. That's so good.
It's absolutely everything Ed's talking about. I'm living it, and I happen to just be in finance. So I've taken a lot of steps.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, Ed.
well, that's a great point. And to that point, like Melana, of course, in finance, she's helping her nieces, learn about money from the ground up, but she's also having conversations with her peer group. So it's not just the young folks that she's addressing, but she's looking at, on her same level, the 40 somethings in the world out there, talking to them about money. And of course, if you're more comfortable, you can take that up a notch. So the point is if we can start with this younger group, get them trained up, they're going to be generationally, in the cycle, they're just going to be able to impact so many more people over the course, their lifetime. And then
Yeah.
the next
so good.
generation coming up is going to have a leg up on the previous generation, right? It won't be such a heavy lift. Like my daughters are going to be able to have a much easier way of engaging with money with their children than I did with them. And I've been in finance, just because they grew up thinking about it in a certain way is very natural.
Right.
So
Right.
that's what I would love to see us, make real inroads in this advocacy arm. And there's a reason that a lot of financial advisors, the more credentialed people, aren't doing this type of work. It doesn't pay like a financial advising business does.
Right.
Right? I mean, at the end of the day, we started out in financial advice. You do well there. You work very hard to hopefully make it, because there's no guarantees you're going to make it running a business. And when you make it, you're like, great, I want to be able to coast a little bit and ride this out and enjoy my time because I've worked so hard to get there, to start a second business, which there's no guarantees of success, which doesn't make as much money or not nearly as much if you put the same time into the other business. There's no
Right.
wonder there are far fewer credentialed people working in the space. So you get a lot of, do-it-yourselfers coming out and trying to fill the gap. But the reality is some of that knowledge base is lacking, right, when you come from that source. So, we hope this works. We hope we can have an impact in the world at large and do our part. I guess we'll see.
I think that the site has a lot of good information for people. So you can go learn over at enlightenHer.com. And you have some free booklets. You have the Money Myths Guide, which I found really interesting myself, some of the things that we think about money and why they're not true. And you also have a guide for women that are considering divorce that they can get. And then from there, they can decide if they want to take the course. Women can also gift the course to a friend or a relative who might be thinking about going through divorce, but maybe doesn't know where to start. So I think that's all really, really interesting. Before we go, Melana, I asked Ed kind of his backstory and what inspired him. What inspired you to this business, to both Burning River, working with women, and then the Enlighten Her programs?
Yes, that's a great question. I don't know that I'm necessarily drawn to this business. My background is in floral design. I have a degree in floral design and
I
marketing.
did not know that. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And so at one point I remember thinking, and I actually like vocalize this. I remember thinking like, well, if this doesn't work out, or if I had to pick something else, like I guess I'd want to go into finance.
Mm.
Random thought. I remember meeting with the banker at my local bank in this small town. I was like 18 years old and I had no money, but I was like, how do I invest? And he actually took an appointment with me. I should find out what that guy's name was and thank him. But he was
Yeah,
an
I
appointment with
love
me.
that.
And he was really nice. Anyways, so I guess somewhere in my subconscious, I had this like idea of being a financial advisor. But honestly, I just needed a job out of college. I graduated in 2005. Wasn't the easiest time, for finding a job. It wasn't horrible, but there was a
Right.
big class of people graduating around that time that just weren't getting jobs right away. And so I got offered a job with benefits and I took it. And it happened to be as a
In
financial advisor.
finance.
Yeah, and I met Ed pretty early on, in the
Okay.
process, my manager at the time. Hopefully he never listens to this, but whatever, if he does, he was awful, and Ed had just stepped out of management, and so he kinda took me under his wing and helped me stay in the business, which is a real
Yeah.
challenge. It was a real challenge then, didn't realize how much so. It was a challenge as a woman, I'll be honest, for a lot of reasons. I don't really think about it or talk about it in that way, but definitely was a male-dominated industry, particularly more 20 years ago. Getting better now. I like to think women like me who survived are paving the way and making it more accessible for women like Ed's daughters to come in and not feel some of those, I can't really say barriers, discrimination, maybe more accurate. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just some
Yeah.
challenges there, but I enjoyed the business. Financial planning is a bit like putting a puzzle together, and I like puzzles. I like using that side of my brain and helping clients navigate things and helping them plan. And so it kind of feel like I fell into it, but it's not a
Yeah.
really natural fit. And so I feel
Right.
fortunate. And like I said, if it weren't for meeting Ed early on, I'm not sure I would have survived. I don't know where I would be. He just was able to take me under his wing, kind of saw, I guess, someone who had potential in a not great situation. And so we've been working together for almost, well, I guess basically 19 years at this point.
Yeah.
And so from that, relationship, Burning River Advisory Group was born, I think in 2009. We decided to give it a name, but it's been there all along. It's been the two of us, growing a business all along. We just formalized it. And then Enlighten Her, I kind of shared my part of the story on
Yes.
Enlighten Her.
Yes.
Just definitely, it's had a lot of ideas over the years, and we've done a lot of different training and a lot of different things and tried a lot of different stuff out. This was the one that when he brought it to me, it definitely, struck a chord with my mom and her story. So it seemed the right one to move forward with.
I love it. I love it. Well, we will have links to both your guides in our show notes and a link to the website. So anyone listening, women, find more information at enlightenher.com. If you have daughters, start educating them on money so that they can be smarter when they get older and will be able to create their own path forward. And Ed and Melana, thank you so much for being my guests today on Brand for Good.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
My
Yeah, thank you.
pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
And we'll see you next time on Brand for Good. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Brand for Good show. If you like what you heard, please hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode, and leave a review so other purpose-driven leaders can find this valuable content. To learn more about building a brand for good, please visit prosperforpurpose.com for more resources and information on all the ways you can work with us.